everybody. My name is Pat, and I am a extremely grateful member of this recovery program. I'm also an adult child, and I grew up in a dysfunctional family system. I came into these rooms through the Al-Anon program, and now today I kind of hang my head on CODA as well as ACA, Adult Children Alcoholics. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. These special topic Zoomcasts were created because of the request that has been expressed in various meetings. And this series is open to anyone in any 12-step recovery program. The sessions are not registered, nor they're endorsed, nor they're affiliated with any other 12 or any really 12-step program. If you know someone who might be interested in this series, Allie, if you would please stick in the chat box the flyer for the upcoming sessions, that would be great. And people can share that if you can get your hands on it, and share it with other folks that might be interested in this. As a reminder, tonight's program or Zoomcast will be recorded. Later, we will post it on YouTube, our YouTube channel that is called Growing in Recovery. We have set up the recording to protect your anonymity as much as we possibly can. This means that your names will be eliminated from the video box. You can even eliminate your photo if you'd like, just by turning off your camera. The focus of tonight's Zoom meeting will be healthy communications in recovery, and hopefully will last about 90 minutes, or no more than 90 minutes. Communication is such a broad subject. There's so many areas that we could address, like, making first contact with other people, expressing feelings, asking for what we want, solving problems, establishing boundaries, fighting fair, ending conversations, gosh, and the list goes on and on and on. Obviously, in one evening, there's no way we can cover all of that material. After looking briefly at what motivates our communication, we're going to try to discuss 3 specific areas tonight. Maybe in the spring, we might address some other areas if we'd like to as a group. Tonight, we have 3 facilitators. Catherine, would you introduce yourself and briefly share what you're going to be talking about?
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine. I'm a recovering codependent and a member of ACA. And I'm going to be talking about active listening tonight. What I'll be speaking on, I'm not an expert, okay? I do feel that the level of my good communication, my listening skills determines the quality of my relationship. So I can't think of any piece that's more important. But we'll be breaking listening down, what people typically do, how to active listening, which I think is compassionate listening. And then we'll be introducing the other speakers on the other topics. Thank you.
All right, Nancy, would you introduce yourself? Share a little bit about what you're going to...
Sorry. My name is Nancy. I'm from Indiana, and I am a member of Al-Anon, a member of ACA, and a member of CODA. My program started out in Al-Anon in 1987, and I've been a part of all 3 programs now for about 5 years or so. What I'm going to talk about tonight is how to handle criticism. And I'm kind of an expert on it because I did it really, really poorly before the program. So that's the part I'm an expert about, is how to do it the wrong way. But hopefully, as a result of this, you guys will have some tools that you can use to handle criticism when it's aimed at you.
Thanks, Nancy. I appreciate that. And of course, I am Pat. I'm also one of the facilitators for tonight. What I'm going to do is, after talking a little bit about some of the core stuff, I'm also going to talk a little bit about dealing with conflicts and really difficult communications. So let's get started. As Nancy and Catherine and I started talking about tonight's topic, we really were reminded that people come into recovery because we're all in pain. I love what one of my sponsors said, which I'll share with you. Jerry used to say, in fact, it was my sponsor's sponsor. He used to say, one of the reasons that he came into the program was because I'm not all here. And he said people that come to the program aren't all there. So now, if you're not here, you're really okay. It's those that are here that are not okay. But if you are here, we get really confused. In other words, I came into the program and I was just in a bad place. If we stay in recovery long enough, we really move from the place of the place of hurting, to the place of healing, and then to the place of helping. When we're new to the program, all we want to do is really talk about what he did and what she did and what they did, and how that hurt us and how that bothered us. We want others to see how awful it was. How can we really be good communicators if our mindset is focused on all of that pain, all that anger, all that fear? We begin to believe that good communication starts with that core, our core beliefs. Three of us talked about it, and we really always recommend that a person, when they first get into this program, tackle those concepts, those flawed concepts, those flawed assumptions that permeates our thinking. How can we really communicate from a place of love or confidence or empowerment or clarity if we're just angry, irritated, and in fear? So we always recommend that first a person attend as many meetings as they can regularly, and that they get a good sponsor and focus on learning and understanding and working those 12 steps. Doing an in-depth fourth step with someone else helps us to really find those beliefs, find those angers, find what's driving our resentments and our fears. We need to develop an understanding of what the forces are that motivate us to behave and to communicate in the way that we do. Only then can we really learn how to communicate in a healthy fashion, from a place of, not from a place of love. I mean, a place of control, a place of anger, a place of fear, but one where we can be truthful. We can see what's driving all this mess, and we can learn to communicate in an honest, accepting, loving manner. This takes time. I've been in the program since 86, 87, 88. I got in when I was 35. I've been practicing this for quite a while. So we don't learn how to communicate healthy just in one session or by reading one book or going to a workshop in one weekend. You know, it just takes time. Okay, so Catherine, would you share with us what you've learned about those good listening skills?
Yes, thank you, Pat. Listening is a complex task. I really love to collect quotes. So quotes teach me something in a short little message. So I want to read a few. Rumi said, there is a voice that doesn't use words. It's called listen. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Stephen Covey said, listening is an art that requires attention over talent, spirit over ego, and others over self. And Peter Drucker said, listening is not a skill, it is a discipline. So what I would like to talk about first is the actual act of listening. And what is that? It is compassion. But there are some things that have to be done in order to do this for someone else. And it really is a gift. And most of us learn through this program that, you know, during our sharing, everyone is listening. And even if they aren't listening, they look like they're listening. And so, you know, that is really a gift, and it allows voice to our feelings, which actually, one of my favorite therapists, he said, what can't be told to another cannot be told to self. So by verbalizing, you know, what we are feeling, we actually learn about us. And by sharing that with another, it is a freeing situation. It allows us to accept our traumas, our difficulties, and by putting words to a feeling, it helps us heal. And so, you know, preparing to be an active listener requires putting time aside for another person. And it also requires us to quiet our mind, because when I'm trying to hear someone, I can't hear my chatter at the same time. I can't be present. I can't focus if I'm thinking something else. So I might have to work on even maybe some prejudices that I might have about someone and clear that out of my mind, you know, that, oh, they're always complaining or whining. Okay, put that aside and just listen, you know. So that requires some introspective work. Putting my ego aside, that I'm not listening to be something to, you know, I'm not doing it for my own ego to make me feel better because maybe I don't have that issue, you know, and I can say to myself, well, I'm not going through that, or, you know, I'm better than that, or whatever. You just have to kind of like accept the other wherever they're at, you know, even if you've gone through it and you've gotten through it and they can't get through it. Being selfless, putting your ego aside and shutting off your mind to fixing. You know, I come from a codependent background. I was the rescuer, the fixer. And to this day, my siblings call me about everything that they need help with. But I've learned to listen because, you know, most people know what they want to do. And most people are going to do what they want to do. And you can't make anyone do something different. So, you know, that fixing and need to rescue has to go away, or you'll never hear what they're saying. And focusing also on the meaning instead of the words. You know, when you're listening, you're also listening to the expression, their intonation, their facial gestures, their posture. You're really almost taking yourself out of yourself and being kind of an observer. And so if you get it wrong, you can always clarify. You can always say, you know, is this what you're saying? Is this what you're feeling? And the worst thing to do when you're listening is to do that. When I first got into nursing school, therapeutic listening was giving back what they were telling you. And it could be really annoying to say, you know, to hear somebody say, I'm angry, and you say, you're angry. I would say, like, didn't you hear me? I just said I was angry. You know, I mean, it's more annoying. So the best thing is to come back with something that when you have enough information, it may take a while, but to know that you are being heard is a real gift. The other morning, my husband, I was telling him something, and I just started realizing he wasn't listening to me. And he said, I'm listening to you. I said, no, you're not listening to me. He said, yes, I'm listening to you. I said, okay, what did I just say? And he told me the thing before the thing. So I said, okay, now I know when you stop listening. So, you know, it's something that is a gift, and it feels great, but it also, you're very aware as a speaker if someone's listening or not. And by just even, if you can watch two people that are very engaged in listening, usually, you know, they'll kind of lean into the conversation and kind of nod or make some kind of or right, or, you know, some kind of word that is not necessarily to stop their thought process. So that's about all I can think of saying on that topic. But the feedback, clarifying statements or questions like, you know, do you feel like somebody's telling me about their mother being very controlling? And I might say something like, do you feel that your mother treats you like a child? Yes, that's exactly how I feel. And I'm 39 years old, and I da 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 da. And so a lot of times, like, that clarification will also spur further depth in the conversation. And that's exactly what you're there for. So just not, you know, not getting it wrong, because if you do, they'll correct you. You don't have to worry about that. You say, do you mean, you know, this? No, I don't mean that. What I really mean is, and so it's also like a confirmation that you're interested in what they're saying and you want to get it right. And nobody gets offended by that. So it's an opportunity for personal growth for both of you, and to make a connection. And isn't that what, you know, really we want? You know, we want deep connection and deep empathy with each other, and any relationship that's important to you. These are really important things to do. I know one time my daughter was trying to tell me something about me, and I got very defensive because she was very angry. And due to me being triggered, I never had the opportunity to hear what she said. And that's a regret that I have. I tried later to get her to talk, and she couldn't even remember what it was. So that's okay. So, you know, there are opportunities that are missed, and you can't go back in time. You know, whatever was they were thinking or feeling at that time. So had I been able to deal with my own triggers and understand that this is about me, this is about me being triggered, and if I put that aside, I could actually learn something about my daughter that I didn't know. So those are really missed opportunities that, you know, can be very painful. Just having that conversation in your head, like if somebody is talking about maybe they were traumatized or they were attacked or raped or whatever, and if you had a similar feeling, you know, you may start having those voices or those images come back to you. And it's something that really, like when Peter Drucker said that it's a discipline, that's where discipline would come in, is that you really put yourself aside for the other. Noticing their nonverbal communication, you know, if they start getting tense while they're talking about something, it just gives you so much information I'm a nurse. I work in a behavioral hospital, and it's really important to observe that physical demeanor, because it can guide you to how far to, pursue a conversation. And maybe somebody is just getting, more tense as you not really probe, but as you maybe get into a deeper aspect of that. And sometimes it will give you a gauge as far as, some people are not ready to broach certain topics. And to be of service, to be to do that selfless kind of active, compassionate listening, people will talk when they're ready to talk and not a minute sooner. And so if it's just too overwhelming for them, you can take a break. You can allow that to happen. It's not my issue. Like, I've had some sponsees say, oh, I don't want to burden you with my problems. And I say, but it's not my problem, it's your problem. I'm not going to get so engaged in your issue, because it's codependent behavior. It is your issue. It is for you to solve that. And how I can be of service is to just be available. So my connections and my depth of relationship depends on this skill, this listening skill. And then if I have a true friend, I get that in return. I'm just not being the selfless one. It's a combination that I give that gift and I get that gift back. And so active listening is a compassionate act, putting yourself aside and being available for another is a joy. It's a real joy when I can listen and not intrude, that I am not furthering a trauma. I'm not making life more difficult for the other. And it feels really good to be able to have been in those positions. Now, if it's something that I can't relate to, I could use dual perspective, which is basically, sorry, looking at my timer here. Okay. Using dual perspective, like if somebody is fearful, I may not have had that same fearful experience that they had, but I know what being fearful feels like. Or I know what, some other uncomfortable feelings feel like. I may not have had the same experience, but I can relate by saying, how would I feel if that happened to me? And by doing that, it sort of allows you to sort of connect on that level. So you should never tell anyone how to feel. That's another thing. By listening, you're not giving advice. You're not telling someone how they should feel. We all want everyone to be at peace and be, have less trauma and be able to deal with their life in a positive, impactful way. But it's not our job to tell someone how they should feel. Maybe somebody's going through something that wouldn't bother me at all, but it bothers them a great deal. So that empathy and that ability to look past yourself and step into a space with another person is what active listening is really about. And I keep working towards that goal. So thank you for letting me share.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, my name's Nancy, and I'm going to talk with you about dealing with criticism. And I'm going to start by talking about what it was like before the program, just a little bit, not much. But I wanted you to know that before the program, if I was criticized, it made me feel like it confirmed my belief that I was a bad person. It confirmed my belief that somehow I was flawed. So if you told me you didn't do this paper right, that meant that I wasn't right. And that's the way I approached life. And so criticism was very much tied in with my self-esteem. It was very much tied in with, I gave you all the power, because when you criticized me, that put my self-esteem in the toilet. And you had all the power to determine whether my self-esteem was high or low or medium or whatever. And so I had to remain in denial about anything that I didn't do correctly, because my self-esteem could not handle the blow of the fact that I was doing something wrong. So it got to the point at one point where I lost a job because I could not hear the criticism from my boss. Today, when I look back on that job, if I had heard what he was saying, and if we had come up with a plan to fix it, I probably never would have lost that job. But because criticism was so tied up with my self-esteem, I could not hear it. I literally said, no, you're not going to say that to me. That's literally what I said. And so criticism, it was very, very hard for me to handle criticism before the program. When I came in the program, I learned some easy ways to deal with criticism. They were ways that I learned even before the steps. So I'm going to start with letting you know some of the easiest ways that I was taught to deal with criticism. First of all, I was taught not to respond. I was taught to, not get involved in the argument. So there are some phrases that they teach in Al-Anon family groups, because you don't want to fight with an active alcoholic. You just plain don't want to do that. So there's some phrases, when someone is criticizing you, you can just look at them and go, oh, or you can go, I'm really sorry you feel that way. Or you can say, oh, I hear you. Or you can say, oh, tell me more. You can say, oh, I understand. Or I see. Or you can say, you might be right about that. But those are some of the phrases that I learned very early in the program. And those phrases stopped a lot of fights. Those phrases stopped a lot of communication patterns that I had participated in. And it takes two to make a communication pattern. Takes at least two people. And really, if you look at your communication, let me rephrase. If I look at the communication with the people around me, I can see that there are definite patterns to my communication. And I can recognize the patterns that are not healthy, and I can stop those patterns. So that was the first way that I learned how to deal with criticism. But then as the program went on, and I delved a little bit deeper through working the steps, working with a sponsor, experiencing the unconditional love of sponsors in this program, my self-esteem started to grow. And I realized that my ability to deal with criticism is directly proportional to my self-esteem. In other words, if my self-esteem is high, and I think that I'm a good person, and I think that, there are some things I can do pretty well, and I think that, I remember that I'm a child of God and God doesn't make junk and all that stuff, then if somebody criticizes me, it's not going to impact me nearly as deeply. But if my self-esteem is already low and I'm thinking that I'm not a very effective person, I'm not very good at what I do, I'm thinking that I'm flawed somehow and all of that, if somebody criticizes me, it just cuts me down and puts me back in a place where I don't want to be. So I knew from that what I really had to work on is keeping my self-esteem up, because I don't want to be that person that when they're criticized, it tears them down to nothing. There's something that I wrote, and I wrote it after reading a book that actually Pat Morgan recommended. And the book is called You Can't Make Me Angry by Paul O. And it's in our handout, I believe. And what I wrote was, when someone criticizes me, they are trying to put me back in the victim role. I refuse to let them do that. Being a victim means that I don't have choices. It means that I don't have to take responsibility for my life. I want to take responsibility for my life. I want to have choices because I believe that I can decide what's best for me. And the whole point of that is when I'm getting ready to be criticized, or when I'm being criticized, I need to remember that they're trying to put me back in that victim role. And I don't want to be there. So I can take steps to not be there. It's kind of like Eleanor Roosevelt said. She has a quote that says, no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. Okay. Actually, yeah, that's right. No one can make you feel inferior without your permission. Meaning, I have to give that person some power to make me feel inferior. I have to let them somehow make me feel inferior. I have a choice about that. I have a choice about what this person's stuff, whatever they're saying, what it means to me. And I have a choice about how I respond to it. The first step in my making that choice is being self-aware. It's being aware of how I'm feeling, being aware of what's going on around me, and being aware of what's happening in this conversation, to the point that I take a second before I respond. I always get in trouble when somebody says something to me and I just, boom, that quickly respond. I always get in trouble. And I still do it to this day because I forget that I'm a person in recovery. I forget that I have all this, all these tools that I should be using to deal with things. I always forget that I have steps and I have sponsors and I have a program. But what I need to remember is that if I change my response to another person, then I'm changing the whole communication pattern. And that other person is not going to know what to do. They're going to be shocked. if I don't respond in the same way that I always respond. And it's amazing how many people, they'll start arguments or criticize or whatever, knowing or believing that they're going to get under our skin. They're going to make us say and do things that we don't want to say and do. But if I just keep my self-awareness about me, and I keep remembering that I have choices, and I keep remembering that I don't want to react, I want to respond. There is a big difference between the word reacting and the word responding. And the big difference is that breath you take after someone has said something to that breath that I take after someone has said something to me is that nanosecond when I become self-aware and I realize I have choices and I have some ability to steer where this conversation is going. Part of how I do that is by using emotional boundaries. We've all heard about physical boundaries, which is how close I'm willing to let you get to me physically. But there's also emotional boundaries. And that's how much what you say comes in to me. It's almost like I have a net that goes over me. And when you say something, it hits the net. And I have some choices. I have a choice that I can believe that what you said is true and I can let it in. Or I have a choice that what you said, choice that I can say that what you've said is not true and I can keep it outside my boundary. I cannot let it in. And then I have a third choice that is, I can't decide if what she's saying is true or not. So I'm going to put it on the shelf out here and I'm going to think about it later. And those are the three choices that I try to take a minute, take a breath, give myself those choices before I respond to another person. And if I'm walking into a situation where I know I'm going to be criticized, like, for example, a performance evaluation, or, for example, a confrontation with somebody that does not have my best interest at heart, or something like that, then I make sure that I psychologically put my net around me when I go into that situation. I had a situation with some people that I supervised several years ago. It's been about probably 10 years ago now, I would imagine. And when I walked into that room, I knew I was going to be criticized, but I needed to let them say what they needed to say. So I asked my higher power to help protect me. And when I walked in that room, it was like I had a cloak on. And the stuff that they hurled at me, the stuff that they said, did not penetrate my cloak. I was able to keep it outside of me so that I could deal with it objectively and compassionately and help resolve the feelings that people had about what was going on. So that idea, that way of doing things works. I can tell you firsthand that it works. It does take practice. It takes self-awareness, and it takes being ready with some of those phrases I talked about. The other thing I learned is that if I want someone to change their behavior toward me, I must first change my behavior toward them. And that's from that Paul O book, that You Can't Make Me Angry book. And if I want someone to stop criticizing me, if I want someone to listen to me, if I want someone to consider my perspective, that stuff, then I have to be willing to give that to them. And that's why Catherine's part is so important. The listening that we do is so important. So I'm going to give you an example. I wasn't going to talk about this tonight, but I think I am. I'll give you an example. When my husband and I first got married, one of the things about him that I really had trouble with was that he complained a lot about aches and pains. This hurt, that hurt, something else did this, something else did that. He was always tired, he was always upset, he was always something. And I used to say to myself, he just wants attention. And at some point, it hit me, and I think it was when I was having a conversation with another person about this same topic. It hit me, well, why not give him attention? What's so wrong with that? And so the next time he did that, instead of just kind of and walking away, the next time he did that, I said, oh, I'm really sorry you're not feeling good today. Just a compassionate little word. And that's all it took. The first time I did it, he's like, he didn't say this, but I could tell in his mind, he was like, who are you and what have you done with my wife? But I mean, sometimes just a compassionate word instead of a critical word. And, we can make that change in any relationship just as easily as the other person can. Easier, actually, than the other person can. And, this program is based on attraction. So if we want people to come to the program, we want people to want we want people to want what we have, then we need to show that we're compassionate people, that we can listen, that we can take a criticism and we can deal with it constructively. If there's constructive criticism there, deal with it constructively, or we can protect ourselves emotionally from whatever it is that's going on. One of the things that they said in that book, which I thought was really kind of cool, is it said, whoever gets upset first, it's their turn. Just let them have their turn. Instead of reacting and getting upset with them, just, oh, it's their turn. Okay. And just let them go. Just let them get upset. And if that upset means that they're criticizing me, I can wear my emotional coat of armor, my net, and I can take care of myself. I can use those phrases. I can go do something else. I can go call another program person. I can go for a walk. I can do whatever I need to do to remove myself from a situation where I'm being criticized unconstructively. Is that a word? But the first step in any of this stuff that I do, the very first step is awareness. And it's awareness that you have a choice. You have a choice in how you respond. A lot of times responses just come from nothing but habit. I've always said this, so I'm always going to say it. Well, sometimes I can change a habit, and it can be a change that really works for good. And when I do change a habit, then I can keep serene much easier. When I let people's criticism get under my skin, it's like, I immediately lose my serenity. And my serenity is important to me today. My serenity is how I stay grounded, how I stay self-aware, how I keep myself from responding reacting instead of responding, how I keep myself from reacting instead of responding. There's a page in the Hope for Today Al-Anon family book where someone talks about losing my serenity is as easy as passing the salt shaker at dinner. If somebody says, "Can I have the salt shaker?" you pass it down without even thinking about it, right? If somebody says, let me have your serenity for today. Let me criticize you so I can have your serenity for today. We hand it over, right? By saying something back to them that starts a fight. But instead of doing that, if we can change our habit to say something neutral, like those phrases that we said at the beginning, then that's the first step. And then the second step is taking care of yourself afterwards, taking care of myself afterwards by sitting down and figuring out if any of what they said has merit, or doing some things that will raise my self-esteem back up to where it should be, or by calling a sponsor, calling someone in the program, taking it through the steps, reading a page of literature. That's taking care of myself after the moment, after the conversation is over, after the moment is over. Then I really have to take care of myself, because that's how I keep it from nibbling at me at 2:00 in the morning saying, well, maybe he was right. Maybe I shouldn't do blah, 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 Instead of letting it nibble at me, I can take care of myself and work my program. Let's see what I'm forgetting. Yeah, so I talked about some of the phrases that you can use, but there's also behaviors. First of all, walk away, walk away, sit calmly with an open posture. If you didn't walk away and you're still there, then sit calmly with an open posture, because that tells them that you're open to the discussion. Keep your voice tone low, because if you do keep your voice tone low and you sit calmly with an open posture and all of that, it de-escalates the other person. The other person is not going to keep arguing and keep at you and all that. As much, if you can sit calmly, if you can keep your voice down and all of that, then they have to bring their voice down. They have to de-escalate in order to relate to you. So those are good things to do. And you're not being a victim when you do that. You're not being a victim. You're exercising the choices that you have. And you're exercising a choice to not participate. You're exercising a choice not to go to the fight. When things are calmer between you and the other person, and the other person is open to a discussion, then you can go into some of the stuff that Pat is going to go into. Then you can go into more of dealing with the conflict in a conversation. But do that when you've taken care of yourself, when you have worked your program, when you're in a good position, when your sponsor has told you that you're ready for that. And the last thing that I want to say to you tonight is something that one of my sponsees taught me, and that is, you don't have to go to every fight that you're invited to. You can stay home from the fight. And you can do that in lots of different ways. And you don't have to react to every criticism that's aimed at you. You can calmly evaluate the criticism to decide whether or not it's true. You can use your emotional boundaries to help you insulate yourself from the criticism, and you can respond to the criticism in a neutral way so as not to aggravate the fight. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Pat.
Wow, Nancy, that was wonderful. You really gave us a good base to all these difficult situations. Like Nancy, I grew up in a family that did not teach me any of these traits. In fact, what I got was the opposite. Ignore the problem, maybe it'll go away. Don't feel, don't talk, hurry up. Just all those messages of how not to communicate. I can't tell you the number of times when difficult situations pop up that I'll call Nancy, I'll call Abby, I'll call different folks on here and, brainstorm some different ideas to how to tackle it because I wasn't taught. I kind of liken it to, I have a woodworking shop. And I kind of liken it to if I took my woodworking tools and tried to do my gardening. If Mom only taught me certain kinds of life tools and certain ways of communicating, then when I get to be an adult, kind of like Nancy talked about, I don't know how to communicate. So for me, like Nancy talked about, learning to deal with that criticism first, that is just another person's opinion. That's all it is. It's like if I said, Catherine's got on a white shirt. If I look at it from that point of view, after working the steps and after going, having a good sponsor, I can do so much better dealing with that situation. So if somebody will put into the chat box the handout that's dealing with conflict and difficult situations. For those of you who cannot get to the chat box, don't worry about it. I'm going to talk you through this piece. Nancy added some things to it that I will try to update this piece and send it back to our technoids. And maybe what we can do is also put that on the our up there so you can get to it. Well, Catherine will talk a little bit more about that when we get there. Like Nancy, the biggest thing for me to do when a situation pops up that is uncomfortable and I start feeling that tightness in my chest or whatever's going on, and I get irritated or I get frustrated or I'm angry or apprehensive or disgusted, when those situations just keep going over and over and over, kind of like, when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't stop thinking about it, that's when I got to get on that phone and pick it up because I do not know how to do this. When my husband and I first got married, there was a time period where he came out. I was changing the light bulb on a car, and he came out of the house and to assist me, kind of took over the job. Well, for most people, they would have looked at that as, that's so kind. I'm glad he did that, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, not me. And that was because of the old tapes I had learned growing up. What I had heard growing up was, you can't do this well. You're not doing it fast enough. Oh, let me do that because you're too stupid. You can't figure this out. Those were the messages that I had heard. Now, I was 30, 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, early 30s, when I got into the program and was just married for the second time. I'm so glad I got a good sponsor that when that situation happened and I got pissed off, I was so upset because what I thought he was saying was, you're too stupid. You can't figure this out. I'll do it for you. Thank goodness my sponsor helped me learn how to communicate from a more healthy point of view. In fact, my sponsor had me write a letter, and I had to rewrite it probably 4 or 5 times. And he helped me take the anger out. My sponsor helped me take the control out. I want you to, whatever. And to get more clear and come at that situation from more of a place of acceptance and love, and realizing, that's not what he was intending. He just wanted to come help. But it was good for me to be able to catch this and realize that's an old tape. I've got a issue here. So in the process, Don and I could talk about it, and I could share that what I prefer, is that you come out and ask me if I need some help. Because very honestly, sometimes when I get finished changing a light bulb on a car, I go, woohoo! I beat the system. I don't have to, somebody's not going to charge me $25 to change a light bulb that costs $3. I just get an excitement out of being able to do that kind of stuff. So the handout that you got that's on there, it's really more of a framework. It's something, in fact, Nancy started some of this, and over the years of working with communication and trying to deal with difficult situations and problems, we've added to this list. So in there, on that handout, the first thing it talks about is when anything pops up that I am frustrated about or irritated, or I feel that tightness in my chest, I'm kind of like Nancy said, stop, breath, The acronym that I was taught for stop was S stands for stop, T stands for think, O stands for observe, and P stands for process. And for me, the first thing I have to do is remember to breathe. I know that sounds so simple. It's like, what's wrong with you, Pat? Can't you breathe? But when I get tight, I find I take a lot of little shallow breaths. And it's hard for me to think when I am engulfed in fear. Having worked the steps, I can understand what's driving that fear now. And so when I stop and deal with whatever the situation is that pops up, I can first think about, okay, what's driving this fear? Is it actually true? Really? Because I can create all sorts of stories in my head. Is it based on flawed thinking? So many times it's not. So once I do that, once I stop, then I take this framework of dealing with difficult conversations, and I kind of look through this. I still pick up that 3,000-pound phone, but I look through this list, and the first part of that list says, before I speak, is it really important that I say what I want to say? And is it really important that I say it right now? When I first got in Al-Anon, they always talked about families of alcoholics and dysfunctional people want to force solutions. We want it fixed right now, and we want to guarantee that this is the right way to do it. So if I take that pressure off, it helps me do that. So is what I'm going to say coming from a place of wanting him or her to change? When I look at that, in fact, I had to go upstairs to my husband today and kind of make an amends because I wanted him to do something different. And step one, that's not my job. It's not my job to tell him what to do. He's just an adult. He's not 3 years old. So, um, is what I'm going to say coming from a place of wanting him or her to change? Am I trying to control him? Am I trying to get him to think? Am I trying to get him or her to behave? And boy, if I do, that sends up some red flags. If what I'm going to say is it coming from a place of wanting him or her to think differently, my sponsor caught me on that one because I was told, Pat, so now you're trying to control their thinking? And I was. I really wanted them to blah, blah, blah. It was kind of crazy. Is what I'm going to say coming from a place of giving my free or unsolicited advice? Boy, that's one that catches me real quick. So many times, and I love what a newcomer, I wish he was on this meeting because he's got so much to say, but he said something like, I really have to check my motives. Why am I saying this? And many times when I'm giving free advice, I'm wanting them to see this point, understand this, learn this concept, and they haven't asked me to give them that advice. I don't know if you feel like I do, but when somebody walks up to me and says, oh, you need to blah, 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 it feels like they're reaching out and grabbing my lapels, and they're gently pulling me. You need to think this way. You need to do it whatever, And when I feel that pull, my natural reaction is to go the opposite way, not give into the pull. So that's one of the things that I really work hard at, is not giving advice unless somebody has asked me to sponsor them, unless they have called me and asked for that behavior, or asked for some feedback. The next question on here is, does it really need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? Does it need to be said by me? That stops me many times, because sometimes I get back to that whole concept of I want them to blah, 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 fill in the blank. Sometimes that's none of my business. Do I need to know what he or she is thinking so I can control it? Many times I will start asking questions because I'm trying to figure out the why so that I can teach them the right way, which is my way of thinking. And that's absolutely crazy. When we first started working on this, Nancy gave me a few of these, and I really like these. So let's say it's a situation where I do need to share something. So I can use these little beginnings of sentences that's on the handout. The first one is, I'm supposed to just state the facts. I'll give you the how I would do it if with that example of Don coming out to the car and taking over putting in the light. So if I'm just stating the facts without judgment, I'm not going to say, well, you came out to the car and took over my job. That's got some judgment in it. So how could I say that? This morning, when I was changing the light bulb, noticed that you came out to the car and you took the job and changed it. Or I try not to get away to make sure I'm not being judgmental in that. Sometimes, under some circumstances, I may want to double check. And I've added this one in recently because we had one of my sponsees was having a real difficult situation, and we realized that once she stated the facts, it would be a good idea, like a lot of these newscasters do. What they'll do is they'll do a summary of what they're going to talk about, and they're getting ready to interview somebody that's maybe written a book, and they'll say, did I get that right? And I love that because I could say to them, here's what I noticed happening. Is that what you noticed? Have I gotten it right? Did I miss something? You know, just so that we can get the facts up on the table. We human beings, sometimes we can't see the facts. So if we can agree on the facts first, that's kind of helpful. Then I can go to something along these lines, and I can pick from these. I don't have to do them all. They are, I feel, I think, I want to, whatever. I prefer, I'm willing to. Now, under the circumstance like the example I was telling you about of Don and the light on the car, I would go something like, I felt really stupid when that happened. The reason I felt stupid is because all my life jobs had been taken away from me because I wasn't good enough. And when that happens, I think what you're saying to me is you're not capable of doing that. I also realized that most probably that's not the place you were coming from. And I'm going to skip one because this just didn't fit the situation. What I prefer is if you see me doing some project, if you would ask whether I would like some assistance with that. You know, so it's a way for us to open up the conversation without the anger, which, boy, I can get into real quickly. So I can share all that stuff. And kind of like Nancy said, if I do it slower, if I do it with a calm voice instead of the anger, then the communication gets so much better. I have to slow it down. My family, fast was the order of the day. We had to do everything fast. We had to eat fast. We had to talk fast. We interrupted each other. So you didn't have time to think. So now what I try to do is really slow it down so that I've got time to know where I'm coming from, understand the control I might want to enforce, or, you know, what's going on inside of me, and then come at it from a healthy place. After doing the steps and working with this framework, now when a situation pops up, and I feel bewildered or upset or irritated, you know, with a family member or somebody in the program or, you know, some friend, it doesn't matter. I really have learned that I've got to pick up that 3,000 pounds. What y'all have taught me helps me deal with those conflicts and those difficult conversations. I really wish we had hours to talk about this, but can't get it all in one shot. I'm getting everything I wanted to say too. When Catherine and I and Nancy were talking about putting this together, we did talk about a couple of resources that we really like. The first one is, Nancy's already mentioned it, and it's going to be on the handout. And if somebody will stick that in the chat box right now, it'll be real helpful. These are kind of resources. This is the book that we were talking about referring to. It was written by a person in recovery. And I'll get that out of the way so you can see it, is You Can't Make Me Happy. You can't make me angry. I have reread the book and changed all the words from You Can't Make Me Angry after I read it the first time. I love this book. I've now redone it in that You Can't Make Me Fearful. And a lot of it really sticks. That's a really good resource. For those of you who know a little bit about the closing of this meeting, we use what Dr. Paul said, and we use it. The answer, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. If I find some person, place, thing, or situation is unacceptable to me, I can find no serenity till I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being as exactly as it's supposed to be right now. So we close with that all the time. This is the man that wrote that piece. He knows what you really need. The other one that I have used many, many times for both myself as well as sharing it with my sponsees is life skills for adult children. This one really gives you a lot of the basics when it comes to dealing with other people. A lot of the basics of expressing our feelings, of working with others, of problem solving. And it's such a good book to get back to the simplicity sometimes of what we need. But I highly recommend that one. You can get this one in Audible, and there are places that you can get it to read to you. I know a couple of my sponsees who are here don't like to read like me, and so I have learned how to have one of my devices read the book to me. Take notes from that. Also on the handout that you're going to get, I'll get it in there. Here, you've got those two books. You'll also see links to our Growing in Recovery channel. The channel has, I like to call it a folder, they call it a channel on YouTube, but it's got a lot of the different topics that this group has put out there. So in there you'll find the link just to the channel itself. You'll also find a link to the anatomy of the 12-step study that we did last year. You'll find a link to sponsorship and how it played an important role in my recovery. You'll find a link to a talk on self-esteem, on fear, on anger, resentment, and manipulation, as well as one on abandonment and shame. And we're talking about putting some more up there. We'll put this one up there once we get it processed and edited and all that kind of stuff. The last thing I wanted to say is difficulty in communication. It really does provide us with an opportunity to grow up. It provides us an opportunity to practice being a better person, and that's what it did for me. It gave me an opportunity and gives me an opportunity to practice being a better partner, better family member. It helps me be a better sponsor. It helps me be a better friend because I'm not so tied up in a lot of that stuff. You know, I can either dread situations that might pop up, or I can slow down long enough to kind of become aware of my feelings, accept those feelings and the reality of the situation, and remember that I don't have to force a solution right now. I've got time. I can say, let's talk about this tomorrow. I like what you said. I just want to think about it some. Or that's an interesting thought. Some of those phrases that Nancy used. And I'd like to talk to you Thursday about it because I'm kind of tied up right now, and I'd like some time to think about it. Then I get on the phone and I call some other people so that I can get some clarity. I am such a chameleon. You know, that little lizard that, you know, you put him on blue and he changes to from one color to another color, and that's what I used to do. I became hyper vigilant of what other people wanted and tried to keep them happy. So being clearer in my communication style, slowing down and thinking helps me tremendously. right. Catherine, Nancy, is there anything else y'all want to add to any of this conversation before we turn it over to Catherine to do the closing?
I'm good, Pat.
And to do the open discussion?
Nancy, did you have anything to add? I'm good.
Okay. All right, so what Catherine's going to do is she's going to open the floor for sharing, and we'll share for a little while. She'll talk to you about that, and then she'll do the closing.
Okay.
Catherine, it's all yours.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Nancy. This was really informative. I really enjoyed this. We're going to go ahead and open the floor for sharing. If you want to raise your hand, your digital hand, I'll call on you in order, and we'll probably keep it to maybe 2 or 3 minutes, since we'll be closing about 5 minutes to 9. We have about 10 minutes here. So if anybody has any questions, or you want to talk about something, we're open. Oh, sorry, Vernell, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here with you. Vernell, recovering codependent adult child of a fear-based and dysfunctional family. I really appreciated this. I took some notes, and one of the things that I say a lot is that about my recovery is that I received the gift of choice. And I heard that tonight. In what Nancy shared on. I do have choices in how I react and respond, and I need to just respond. Reacting has never worked. That's one of the reasons I got into the rooms of recovery. So I really like that. And just a lot of good things. And I just appreciated all the effort and time that went into it. And it was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernell. Sally?
Hi, Sally, adult child. Such a great presentation. So appreciate it. I'm wondering if either of you have comments on, I'm in the stage where I know all this intellectually. I get it. I'm like, yep, everything you're saying. But when I'm in the moment, the reactions sometimes happen at lightning speed. And then I have to deal with so much guilt, because then the guilt is, I'm not doing my program right. I'm failing after all this time, which I know the voice, right? But is there a time where you see that it actually does slow down and that gap starts to show up? And is there any advice you have? Like, I want the gap to happen now. Thank you very much. And to get me from where I am with all this awareness, and I'm able to make amends, and that's fine. But man, sometimes I just get so triggered and I'm down that rabbit hole. So any comments you had would be lovely. Thanks.
Thank you, Sally. Laura?
Hi, everyone. Laura from Louisiana, adult child and codependent. I just wanted to thank you all for putting on the Zoom presentation. Thank you to the presenters, Catherine, Nancy, and Pat. Really wonderful stuff. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments that really resonated with me. So many things did, but what stood out when we're talking about putting on the cloak and the net to protect ourselves emotionally from things that may be coming our way. I heard a speaker once say it this way, is a terminology he used, and observe but not absorb. And I love it. I love that. That's been helpful for me. I've been trying to do that. And then the other thing that I thought really resonated with me tonight is the ability to observe criticism, maybe some constructive criticism we should absorb, right? But is directly related to our level of self-esteem. I've been able to kind of see that in my 1-year journey with ACA. I thought that was really, really interesting too. And it resonates with me, and I can see how that is definitely true. As my self-esteem increases, I'm able to tolerate, and be more open-minded. of things that come my way, including constructive criticism. So thank you all so much. Good job. And I'll pass.
Thank you, Laura. Abby?
Hi, everybody. I'm a recovering codependent and an adult child, and am just blown away by all the good information tonight. Kind of to touch on what Sally was saying, one of the things that Nancy said that really caught my ear, and a lot of it caught my ear, was that sometimes I forget I'm in recovery. And, you know, it can happen that quickly. You know, we think everything's going along just fine, and then somebody triggers you, and we forget that we're in recovery. However, with recovery as a backing, I don't have to go too far to have my back up against the wall and realize I've got some support there, and I've got a backbone, and in that backbone is a toolbox. And I can take my criticism and mull it over and own it. And that makes me, owning some of what somebody says in order to get past whatever stumbling block we're on is key for me to forgive myself and that person for us having to have collided over an issue. So again, thank you, everybody, and keep practicing.
Thank you, Abby. Susan?
Well, hi, ACA and codependent. I'm missing something here. It's between the lines. I know it's here, but I can't put my finger on it for myself. And so what I'm hearing, halfway hearing the whole message, is sort of how to stop ourselves, how to take a breath, how to be actors and not reactors. And not, I don't do that. I've never done that. I've been shut down, shut in. I just retreat inside. So for me to blurt something out or to lose control, and I've only done it once or twice, and it was decades ago. And I stopped that. And I also stopped saying anything. So when it comes to communication, I listen to some people's ideas and shares, and I think, man, I would love to have the problem of speaking too much. I'd love to have the problem of blurting something out and making amends for that, because I can't even find the words. So for me, the communication would probably need to be more, how do I even start opening my mouth? How do I sort my feelings out in the first place? And then find the words. I don't know. So I'm sure it's here between the lines, and I just can't hear it yet. And I'm so new to ACA, not even, well, May, not close to a year. It's coming, I guess, but oh, sometimes I think, man, I wish I could be the person that went blah. Sorry. But anyway, I'm learning more all the time, and thank you very, very much for the effort. That how do you thank some people that do so much for you? I don't know how. Thank you. Pass.
Thank you, Susan. Karen?
Hi, I just want to thank everyone for this. This is like what I needed to hear today. And yeah, it was just such good information about listening. And then also just, what stuck to me, especially with my partner, I tend to get so reactive. And it's just, you don't have to go to every fight you're invited to. And I like that. So that's going to stick with me. I'm going to use that when he gets back next week. So I just want to thank you guys. It was awesome.
Thank you, Karen. I'd like to share a little bit on just what I've heard so far. And, you know, Susan, you know, sins of omission are just as bad as, you know, probably blurting something out, right? Because the communication does not happen. Whether you don't speak or you speak too much or you say too quickly, they're all offenses, right? And everybody gets hurt by it. But I know new to recovery, I couldn't really articulate my feelings. It was just too strong. I couldn't put it into words. There's just certain things in the beginning. until the pain was less. When the pain lessened, I was able to speak. And I don't know if that helps or not, but I've always been kind of mouthy. So, you know, I have a quick retort, which gets me into a lot of trouble. But lately I've been having that pause, which has let me off the hook. I'm really glad I didn't say that. You know, like if I just focus on my breathing and maybe listen more, you know, understand more, because that's really what listening is all about, and speaking is all about, communication is all about, is understanding, right? Creating a better understanding. So just wanted to add that. Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane, and I'm a grateful recovering codependent. I also really want to thank the presenters tonight. An excellent presentation, a lot to soak in. I took lots of notes. And I did want to say something about the person I can relate to the person who shared that they tend not to talk, but to internalize. For me, what I've learned is that I needed to work on two things in order to be able to open my mouth. One was fear, deep, deep fear. And the second, that was a big part of that fear, was my self-esteem. So I know Nancy talked about that and the emotional boundaries. So that was an important piece for me as I've been in recovery, setting those emotional boundaries and having that net and asking myself the questions, you know, is this true? Do I need to let it in or not let it in? And then to really take care of myself by working on my self-esteem and letting go of my fear. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Jane. Is there anyone else that would like to share anything? I would like to say one thing. In CODA, one of the promises is, I know a new freedom. And I think communication is a new freedom. And sometimes the skills have to be worked on, understood, and expressed. And it takes time. Be patient with yourself. In the efforting, it will happen. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and close out the meeting unless somebody has something to say. Okay. This is the first of our special topic series. We will post the session on the YouTube sometime in the next week. Again, you can find a copy of the Zoomcast on our YouTube channel, Growing in Recovery. Copies of handouts will be posted in our Google Docs account, or you can email growinguptogetherinrecovery@gmail.com. Allie, could you put that in the chat for everyone for a copy? I think these will also be available on our regular meeting on Thursday also. We can maybe have that posted if you missed it tonight. All these special topics, as well as our recovery topics, like learning more about the 12 steps, or abandonment and shame, or finding a sponsor, dealing with anger, resentment and manipulation, dealing with fear, are all available by going to the YouTube channel, searching for Growing in Recovery. Our next Zoomcast will be October 12th, 2022 at 7:30 Eastern Time. We will be focusing on breaking up with isolation to avoid breaking down, how to deal with isolation and the social aspects of recovery. Are there any questions? Abby, did you have a question? Okay. Okay, as we bring the Zoomcast to a close, we want to remind you always take what you need and leave the rest. I'll close with a version of the Serenity Prayer. You can say it along with me. Today I seek the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you, everybody.